Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Cropper here. Going to be doing the Analytic synthetic dichotomy. This is by Leonard Peikoff. We won't be doing the entire thing. I'll be skipping here and there. And our motive for this is part one of this video. Part one of this video was Anoop Verma making some accusations against this. Now, he quoted this paragraph here for his opening evidence, which comes after a setup that explains what Peikoff is talking about. Once Peikoff has set everything up, then he gives this. And this is given as evidence by Anoop, so that tells you a little something. So let's read a little bit here. He says he was defending capitalism, and he gave an argument that monopolies are caused by government intervention, and they're logically impossible under capitalism. So, it's by you define a monopoly as occurring when force is used. Who has force? The government. The government has a monopoly on force, so only the government can create monopolies. The professor was singularly unmoved by my argument, replying, logically impossible, of course, granted your definitions, right? So we've all met this type of person who says it's logically true but not factually true. In fact, we're all thinking about these people constantly right now. There's a debate with leftists and the left and the right within objectivism. Leave logic aside now, says this clown. Be serious and consider the actual empirical facts on the matter. So they believe that you can divorce the empirical from the logical. To the philosophically uninitiated, this response will be baffling, yet we meet its equivalents everywhere today. Okay, so after Peikoff makes this setup, he says it's called the Analytic synthetic dichotomy, and then he says, the theory of the analytic synthetic dichotomy penetrates every corner of our culture, reaching directly or indirectly into every human life, issue, and concern. Alright, now that is motivation for you to read further. That's the structure that the essay takes. But this is additionally, this has been proved by what Peikoff has said above. That this logical fallacy, this incorrect way of looking at, oh dear, that's not what I meant to do. This incorrect way of looking at the situation causes mayhem in life. And Peikoff has proven this above, and this is just an exemplification or a solidification, a concretization of that. Its carriers are many, its forms subtly diverse, its basic causes complex and hidden, and its early symptoms prosaic and seemingly benign, but it is deadly. Now, I don't think Anoop quoted that whole thing, but that was where he decides he's going to quote after Peikoff proves this point as concretizing the point, or is formalizing the point, let's say, because he's concretized it first, and then he makes an abstraction of the point. And Anoop doesn't quote the evidence, just the conclusion. And that's in poor form, Anoop. Okay, but continuing. We're skipping down a bit to here. The theory in question is not a philosophical primary. One's position on it is. Whether it be agreement or opposition derives in substantial part from one's view of the nature of concepts. The objectivist theory of concepts is presented above in Ayn Rand's Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology. That's here, and this is an afterword, or a late chapter in that book. So he's building on Rand's theory of concepts. The theory was originated by implication in the ancient world, but has been brought forward by Hobbes, Leibniz, Hume, and Kant. So let's take a look at what the analytic synthetic dichotomy is all about here. Here it is. A man is a rational animal. Ice is solid. 2 + 2 = 4. Those are number one, number one, number one, if you see the structure here. Now there's some similarity between those. You can just set your definitions for words, and the number ones make sense. Okay, your definition of 2, and your definition of 4, your definition of plus, your definition of equals, and you know that sentence. Okay, you don't have to test that sentence. You know it by your definitions. Ice is solid. Well, we define ice as solid water. Man is a rational animal. What is man? He's a rational animal. Is man a rational animal? Yes. So once we set our definitions, these sentences are perfectly easy to do. A man has only 2 eyes. Now, are we sure about that? Is there anybody whose eyes have been poked out, or one of their eyes has been poked out, or they were born in such a way? So maybe that's not the case. Ice floats on water. Can we imagine ice sinking? 2 quarts of water mixed with 2 quarts of ethyl alcohol yield 3.86 quarts of liquid at 15.56 degrees Celsius. See, he puts that in there to prove that these are claims that you have to go out to reality and try. You can't just deduce these from your definition. Ice floats on water. Now, objectivists would take a disagreement with this one here, and the man has only 2 eyes. We would take a disagreement with that too. We would say that doesn't make any sense. Come on, you can define man as having 2 eyes. And so just because somebody gets his eye poked out doesn't refute a definition. So that's silly. And ice floats on water? What kind of ice? Nitrogen ice? What do you mean? But what do you mean by what do you mean by ice? What kind of ice? That's what we could say there. So we have to go check with reality about the definition of that. If you mean water ice floats on water, then we would say, so this looks very confused to us, right? But this is the basis, this type of thinking, this type of, this one I can look at with just definitions. This one I have to check reality. This is just definitions. This one I have to go to reality. See, they're divorcing reality from logic. That's the whole analytic synthetic dichotomy. It's a dichotomy in the sense that there's actually not a divorce here. Okay? These things are not separate entities. There is no analytic truth and synthetic truth. Okay? So when Anoop says that Kant was trying to save the day by healing them, that's absurd. There's nothing to heal. But by saying that there's something to heal, you do cause a lot of problems Kant has caused with this analytic synthetic dichotomy. Alright, let's see what Peikoff has to say to explain these. The first proposition in each of these pairs, it is said, can be validated merely by an analysis of the meaning of its constituent concepts. So you just analyze them. They're an analytical truth. You can just analyze them. If you don't have to go to reality and get sense perception and then synthesize that with logic. You don't have to make some synthetic creation. You just analyze the concept, okay? So that's like a priori truths, okay? If one merely specifies the definitions of the relevant concepts in any of these propositions and then applies the laws of logic, one can see that the truth of the proposition follows directly, and to deny it would be to endorse a logical contradiction. Hence, these are also called logical truths, meaning they can be validated merely by correctly applying the laws of logic. Now, see, an objectivist is going to get their panties in a bunch again right here. We're going to say, excuse me, the laws of logic are derived from mathematics, which are derived from sensory data. So you cannot take the laws of logic as an a priori set of truths that you can just play around with. The laws of logic come from somewhere. So we're not going to allow you to get away with this divorcing logic from reality, even at that step. But continuing, thus if one were to declare that a man is not a rational animal, or 2 plus 2 does not equal 4, one would be maintaining by implication that a rational animal is not a rational animal, or that 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 does not equal 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, both of which are self-contradictory. A similar type of self-contradiction would occur if one denied that ice is a solid. Right? If you said ice is not a solid, you're saying that a solid is not a solid. Analytic truths represent concrete instances of the law of identity. As such, they're frequently called tautologies. Right? Like a bachelor doesn't have a wife is another example. Just define a bachelor as someone without a wife and then say that he doesn't have a wife. That's a tautology. Since all of the propositions of logic and mathematics can ultimately be analyzed and validated in this fashion, these two subjects, it is claimed, fall entirely within the analytic half of human knowledge, tautological. Synthetic propositions are said to be entirely different on all these counts. A synthetic proposition is defined by one which cannot be validated merely by an analysis of the meanings or definitions of its constituents. For instance, the conceptual or definitional analysis alone, it is claimed, would not tell one whether ice floats on water. Right? Now you and I might say, excuse me, how exact is our definition? What if we define ice exactly as the chemical structure which goes into a helix shape at a certain temperature? What if that's our definition of ice? Then included in that definition would be an increase in space per volume, etc., and that's why ice gets bigger when it freezes, and that's why it floats. So how exact is our definition? And you're saying, if you're a Kantian, you're saying, no. Our definitions are floating, they are not connected to reality. We just define things. Right? And an objectivist is going to say, well, how did you define them? You see, so this is all just a bunch of bizarre nonsense to an objectivist. Every single step of the way, this is bizarre nonsense. There's nothing valid about the divorcing of ideas from reality. There's nothing valid about saying that one definition you don't have to check with reality for. Every definition comes from reality. None of them are a priori. Not a single one. So every step of the way, this is nonsense. So Anoop, when you say Kant was trying to marry these things together, what was he trying to marry together? Two groups of nonsense arbitrarily defined in some bizarre way and maintained like a dancing hippopotamus. Okay? It's garbage. Alright. Let's skip to here. Analytic truths are necessary. No matter what region of space or period of time one considers, such propositions must hold true, like 2 plus 2 is 4. It's always the case, even in the ice ages, blah, blah, blah. 2 plus 2 did not equal 7.3. Okay, synthetic truths, however, are declared not to be necessary. They are called contingent. This means as a matter of fact in the actual world that men now observe, such propositions happen to be true, but they do not have to be true. They are not true in all possible worlds, like man has 2 eyes. Well, could a man get his eye poked out or be born without eyes? Since his denial is not self-contradictory, the opposite of any synthetic truth is at least imaginable or conceivable. Okay, so can you conceive of ice sinking? Yes, I can conceive that ice could sink, right? Therefore, it's a synthetic truth, okay? Because your definition, etc., but you can't conceive of 2 plus 2 equaling 5, okay? It's imaginable continuing. It's imaginable or conceivable that men should have an extra eye or a baker's dozen of such eyes in the back of their heads, or that ice should sink in water like a stone. These things do not occur in our experience, but it is claimed there is not logical necessity about this. The facts stated by synthetic truth are brute facts, which no amount of logic can make fully intelligible. Now, objectivists are going to say that every single thing that we think of as logical comes from observing facts in reality. So, you are just taking for granted some logical conclusions that we have made from facts. You're divorcing them from facts, and then you're saying there are two groups of things in the world. There are facts and there are logical conclusions, and that they are separated, ignoring the fact that all of that logic came from facts. Okay. Now, here's what I'm going to say at this point, ladies and gentlemen. Go read this essay. It is absolutely brilliant. I think I want to draw a line with this video at this point. Those of you who are interested in the analytic-synthetic dichotomy and wanted to know what's going on with it and what it means, you now have a foothold. Okay? And you can use it to kick it away. It is garbage. Or you can go learn more about it. You can see where we are on the essay here. We're way up here at the top. Okay? So we're just getting started. But consider this a foothold Mr. Cropper has given you. If somebody joins on Patreon, or if you are on Patreon, ask me to do more, and I will do more about the analytic-synthetic dichotomy. But I think I've given those of you who are interested in it, without diving in too deep and making this a big deal for the sake of making a big deal of it, I think you guys can see what's going on with this garbage right here. Okay? If you want to, you can see, I'll leave a link to this. You can go read this essay yourself. If you have a copy of that book on your shelf, go get it and read it. If you appreciate what I do, please patronize me, $5 or $10 a month, and help me build up a stream so I don't feel so guilty when I sit around doing videos on this crazy stuff. And thank you, Mr. Cropper. Out. I think we can stop there. I think so. And if you guys want me to do more on it, say so in some sort of Patreon way. If you're on Patreon or join Patreon, throw me a few bucks. You can do one-time donations over there too. You don't have to sign up for monthly, I think. Alright, Mr. Cropper out.